Right.
Okay.
Okay, so do we need to be linked up on anything, or can we just get started? Okay.
Nobody attending.
All right, let's call this meeting to order of the Board of Directors meeting, Redwood Coast Transit Authority, and we need a roll call.
Cheating for Ms. Nicole, who's on vacation today. Okay, Director Altman.
Here.
Or no, Chair Altman. Vice Chair Short.
Here.
Director Roberts.
Here.
Director Smith. And Director Maston.
Okay, thank you. Let's all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. And begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. And do we have any public comment?
Still
No one.
nobody?
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll move on to the consent calendar.
Move to approve consent?
Have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, let's call the vote.
Director Roberts.
Yes.
Vice Chair Short.
Yes.
Chair Altman.
Yes.
Director, do we have to call the absent directors?
No,
Okay,
no.
thank you.
And I don't think, without any public, I don't think I need to ask for any public comment on the consent calendar. So we'll move on to item 4, which is discussion and update on 2022 summer service platform performance.
Thank you, Chair Altman. This first item kicks off, the reason we wanted to evaluate how we're doing so far is that you guys, the board may recall that at the last meeting we approved significant reinstatement of service to put our best foot forward for this summer with close to pretty much our pre-pandemic service levels. So that happened, and we're excited to report some pretty positive results. We implemented, most of the new service was reinstated on June 6th. One of them was done a little earlier than that on May 23rd, right about the day of the last board meeting. And that was reinstating the 7 o'clock hour service on the Crescent City locals on Dial-A-Ride. The second thing is we reinstated the evening southbound short-term trip, which goes from Crescent City to Klamath. That was cut at the start of the pandemic, reinstated that. It deadheads back from Klamath at about 7:30, so it's in the 7 p.m. hour. We reinstated the third late afternoon trip of the Route 199 between Crescent City and Gasky. And then we reinstated the second of the 3 trips, which is the midday trip on Route 20 between Crescent City and Rcta. So those were some of the ones that we cut at the start of the COVID pandemic. So the service change went really well, with the slight exception of our print brochures were a little late to arrive. We have a new vendor in Medford, and they took a lot longer. So with these guys, we know we need more lead time than we provided them on this one, but they did arrive in late June. Everything else was queued up on Google Maps and the Transit app and everything by the June 6th service change. So looking at the results, how productive the reinstated services have been this first 6 weeks or so of the summer. We have data through about mid-July on them, so then we projected that out to the end of July. But in general, it's good news. The ridership upticked a little bit. We brought back essentially 20% of increase in service hours and got about a 28% ridership increase as compared to April. So it's from spring of this year to summer of this year. So it's positive. It could have been better, but it certainly could have been a lot worse. So that's an aggregate. If you look at the, as close as we can, isolate the 4 different things that were reinstated separately and evaluate their performance. The best producer of the group was that first hour of Crescent City local service. And we kind of knew it would be. That was really painful. That was cut in the dead of winter when we had the driver shortage. So bringing that back was pretty productive, almost 5 riders per hour in June, which is pretty good for the early morning. And July was even better at 5.5 projected. The second best producing of the reinstatements was that short-term southbound 7 p.m. trip of Route 20 from Crescent City to Klamath. That one did, it got off to a slow start in June, but once the word got around a little bit, ridership increased to 2.56 per hour in July. We had 50 riders through about the 15th, so it was starting to pick up. So that one's doing fairly well. That's about, as far as riders per hour, that's about what the whole route does. So that's pretty good that this piece is doing as well or better than the route as a whole. A couple that didn't do as well, but there's still reason for some optimism. The late afternoon 199 trip didn't do much in June, but it started to pick up. It increased by about 50% in July, so it's still a route that needs a lot more riders than it has, but it got up to 1.15 riders per hour in July projected. And then the midday southbound trip of the Route 20 also had a slow start, but nearly doubled its productivity in July. So that was kind of a common theme. I think the weather in June wasn't quite as good, and the word, we don't have much of a mass marketing presence. So I think it took some of our passengers a while for the word to get out, because July definitely has been better than June. That's about all I have to say about that. Beyond the schedules and the website and everything, the GTFS feed, we didn't do any mass marketing or even we don't have any signs on our buses or anything on the exterior. So folks had to kind of find out about it by calling or checking our website out or riding the bus and hearing about it. So we're pretty happy with the uptick in ridership this summer. Fernando, do you want to add anything? How has late July's been? About the same? Yeah, if you want to come up and share your thoughts on the service change, the summer platform.
So as far as late July, everything's been staggering upward. I don't know if it's due to tourism or increased passengers talking amongst each other, but the ridership has gone up from the beginning of July to the end of July.
Very good news.
Excellent. I think it's reflective of us all bouncing out of the pandemic, slowly but surely. Okay, so is there anything from the board, any questions from the board on this discussion item? And any public comment?
We have a follow listener. They don't have their hand raised at this time, and Dan Aaron is also now on Zoom.
Oh, cool.
Okay, let the meeting minutes reflect that Bo Smith has joined the board at 5:38. Moving on to number 5, we have a discussion and approval of the 2022-23 Fall-Winter Service Platform.
Thank you, Chair. This segues perfectly into what we just talked about. So now, because we don't have a meeting scheduled for next month, we need to discuss and kind of make a call, get board direction on what to do for the fall-winter service. We had talked about it at our workshop in April, and at our last meeting, that we would staff favors trying a maximum level of service in the summer, and then maybe pare it back a little just because the recreation and travel activities are so much better in the summer, it's our peak season. And so that made some sense. So we developed 3 alternatives based on how the summers went with our ridership we just talked about a little bit. You can almost put, I've been part of pretty in the back to the conversations on these. We've had a lot of, Fernando's been involved, Dan, myself, Nick. Nick's quite a transit planner from Rcta. I didn't know he gets into it. So these 3 alternatives kind of have all our input, and alternative 1 bring the 300 back. All the alternatives bring the 300 back because that's geared towards the school, the student community. But alternative one pulls back the midday trip of the Route 20 that we just added in June, and it pulls back the midday trip of the Route 199. So those would go back to 2 trips a day, morning and late afternoon. Again, the 199 is Gatsby, Crescent City, so those folks often come in for appointments or shopping. The 199 is Rcta to Crescent City. So those are often also medical trips or shopping or whatnot. So alternative one does that, bring it back to 300, so it's a net savings of like net savings of about 600 annual hours, which equates to about $60,000 or so approximately in the field and our labor rates. Alternative 2 is a different approach. Instead of taking down the one trip out of those weekday Route 20, Route 199 routes, Alternative 2 leaves those in play 3 trips a day, which is much more usable than 2, and then just takes away all the Saturday service. So the magnitude of the cut is actually just a little more. When you pencil all that out, we'll bring it back to 300. So the alternative 2 would have no Saturday service at all on the regional or local routes, but would keep the robust summer schedule Monday through Friday. It's an interesting twist on things. It would save the most money. It would reduce about 780 annual hours, so it's about $80,000. But we would lose Saturday service, so that's something I'm concerned about. So then we got to looking at the COVID money that we, granted it's one time, but we have a lot of it. So we developed alternative 3, kind of in the 11th hour. Look at, hey, what if we don't cut anything back? We keep our summer platform that we're running now for 1 year at least. I think I've been looking at it in the 20-year. In the long range, we probably don't have the funds to run that level of service all year long. But with the one-time COVID money, coming in, we probably do for a year or so. So the alternative 3 proposes to leave the summer service in place that we got now, which is kind of our max service level, leave it in place for the whole winter and then probably through next summer. And then we'll have more time to evaluate, see if we coax out some demand. Ridership's just starting to come back. As we mentioned, hopefully we're coming out of the pandemic. So this will give us a year of robust service, and then more data than if we do have to choose to contract some service, like say this time next year for the fall of 23, we'll have more data upon which to make a good decision. So alternative 3 probably spends about $100,000 more than alternatives 2 and 1, but puts our best foot forward for 1 more year as we're trying to recover our ridership. Basically spending the one-time COVID money a little faster. As it is now, that we probably have 3 or 4 years worth of assistance from COVID left. So because we got our 1.7 million. So far, as we're looking at what we can get reimbursed for, we probably can only get like 300,000 or 400,000 a year back because we can't match federal money to federal. It's complicated. Dan could talk about that. But yeah, so it looks like we can only probably draw 300 or 400 a year. So it's going to take 3, 4, 5 years to spend that down anyway. So we think we could, alternative 3 is feasible, but we could run our best service for 1 year if the board's interested.
So your thought process there was kind of just leave as much ridership hours available, so hopefully you'll garner more activity, even after we have to cut back in a year and a half.
We do have to cut back on more longer history of data to see what's really not being consumed and what isn't. So we'll have another year to try to see if the 3 trips a day can ever catch on to the 199, for example. So that's kind of the thing. Plus, there's a benefit of if we don't contract any hours, that helps because we're actually have good news on the staffing. I think Fernando reported last meeting that it continues, and we we finally been staffing up, so we have the bodies, and we're afraid that we may lose some if we contract service much, because that means less hours available.
Well,
Spread over that.
is it question time?
Are you done with your presentation? Yes, go ahead.
I had a question about alternative 2 here, and you identified staffing problems, but in there it says that it would be a positive for the dispatchers. Would it be a positive to everybody?
So basically on option 2, we went with that one and we discussed it quite a bit due to it would leave everything in place as far as all the routes go and usable still for the public, but it would be the least, the least effect that it would cause on driver staffing levels currently. So basically, we could still service and have the staffing levels that we have now with option 2 or option 3 as well. So option 1 would be devastating because we would basically be eliminating the 4 employees that we brought on currently. And that
We'd
would
be in
just
the same
devastate them.
position we were in a year ago. wouldn't
Yeah.
we? All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any more questions from the board?
I've just got one more, alternative 3, talking about COVID funding. Would we be using COVID funding for that would affect our ability to use COVID funding for things like kiosks or point of sale, ticket buying, anything like that? I mean, are we going to use up too much of the COVID money that's available to us if we go with alternative 3?
Good question. The COVID money is restricted to operating expenses or obviously COVID-related capital stuff like barrier shields and the air purifiers we put in. So we've already requested and got some money back for that capital, but then it's mostly geared for transit agencies to offset lost operating revenue. So that's when I say $300,000 to $400,000 a year, that's the estimated amount of operating funds we can get from it. So the COVID money's hard to spend on capital features. So we might be able to make a case for a kiosk in that it has to be something COVID related, though.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. I thought getting people out of the office and getting them to a kiosk was one of those COVID-related things, but I guess I'm mistaken on that. So.
Maybe it could be. Practically, it could be. But in general, it's operating money to restore funds that agencies lost during the pandemic. So we're probably going to request like about $300 a year. We get so much in our basic federal money, then the TDA is the lion's share of the pizza pie. So what's left in the middle is called overmatch, where we put in more local money, TDA money than we have than the federal money. So the difference is kind of what we'll claim. So it looks to be about $300 or so a year.
Okay.
So it shouldn't hurt anything. If we would keep running it for year after year, it will start to drag us, probably start to draw things down. But 1 year should only hurt by about $100,000.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any more questions? Okay, so is there any public comment on this item? No? Okay, well, I'll bring it back to the board and...
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the staff recommended winter platform 2022-23 service platform alternative 3.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, let's bring on the vote.
Vice Chair Short,
Yes.
Director Roberts,
Yes.
Chair Altman.
Yes.
Thank you. Director Smith.
Yes.
Thank you.
What happens when you're late?
It
That was
wasn't-
my fault.
It wasn't that
was
late.
late.
No problem. I'm sorry about that.
Me and Fernando were laughing there.
Sorry about
I was
that.
like, is he gonna look up?
Okay, alternative 3 it is. Thank you very much. Let's move on to item 6, which is discussion and approval of purchase orders with SC Soft for Validators, Day Wireless for routers, and approval of agreements with SC Soft and Elevon / Little Pay for fulfillment services for RCTA's Far North Contactless Fare Payment Project.
Thank you, Chair Altman, for the intro. This one's going to be a tough staff report, especially after forgetting Director Smith's one. So this project, this one was the one that was on the agenda 2 months ago. We pulled it at the last second because it just wasn't quite ready. There were too many balls up in the air. And they're still up in the air, but we've come quite a ways. This is the project that's a partnership with our partners to the south, Humboldt Transit, Rcta Mad Rivers Onboard now. Trinity backed out at the last second, but they're part of the MOU for it. And Mendocino Transit, which is a big player. So the 4 of us initially are doing this project to make travel in the interregionally through here easier, especially in light of the last couple of 3 years of seeing contraction and reduction of services from Greyhound and Amtrak, which is kind of the trunk route of the corridor on the 101. So one of the aspects of this is the Contactless Fares project will allow us to take credit cards on board. So all the buses on participating agencies will be equipped with, in our case, just 1 reader per agency because of the type of buses we have. In addition, the readers have to have connectivity to the internet because they validate whether a credit card is good and has balance on it when it's tapped. So this also checks off a box that I know Vice Chair Short and Vidette and Director Evans, we've been working on for a long time, is to get passenger Wi-Fi on the buses. So this will do that also because we need a Wi-Fi router that'll power the validators and then also secondarily provide pleasure Wi-Fi inside the bus. So that requires routers. So we have 2 things just here on the first page, 2 pieces of hardware we need to obtain to make the system work. The first one is by a vendor called SC Soft, and these are the validators, 1 per each bus for us. It'll be mounted on a stanchion pole by the ramp or the steps, depending on the design of the bus. So riders will tap it when they get on and tap it when they get off, and that will then automatically deduct the fare from their bank account. So the SC Soft validators, they have not been pre-ordered because they say they can get them for us pretty quick. So I'll be ordering those tomorrow, assuming the board approves this item tonight. The cradle points, we had to jump the gun and go ahead and order because they have a longer lead time. We ordered them about a month ago. But that's the routers that will provide the Wi-Fi on the bus, not only to our passengers for browsing while they're riding along, but it will power these validators and probably also some tablets that we'll have. Our current tablets use a different type of Wi-Fi, signal of their own, I think. Yeah, we're paying for data plans on each of those. We won't have to do that anymore because the cradle points will provide the data and the connectivity on board the bus. So for our future generation of tablets. Sorry. So we have 2 purchase orders and a couple of agreements as attachments for this. The PO to SC Soft and another PO to Day Wireless that we already issued, but I told them we could contract it if the board doesn't want to move ahead with the project. In general, like a lot of tech projects, the budgets, it's cost more than we thought and it's taken longer and it's been more complicated. So perfect tech project. Right?
Every time.
Initially, once this thing's rolled out, we wanted a summer rollout, and obviously that's not happening now. Here we are in late July. I think now we're going to see a fall rollout of this because all the partners they're all kind of in the same boat. We're ahead of one, behind a couple. We're in the middle of the pack. But everyone has to get on board, get tested, and then we can go live and start promoting it in the region. Sounds like we're going to do a $1 fare, which will be amazing to like travel from, if you use your credit or debit card, it'd be like $1 to get from here to Rcta. I think they're talking about $2 and it's $1 if you tap off, to try to train people to tap off, which is not as easy as it sounds. So anyway, we're still on track to do the project if the board supports carrying on. The bottom of page 2 kind of gives you an idea of the scope of the cost of this thing, because it's not only about, you know, $55,000 or so in capital costs to get started, but then there's going to be ongoing costs in the out years for cellular, you know, airtime, router and validator support. They don't give that away either. So you're looking at, in the first year, we have like 10,000 more in data plans and validator support. The upfront capital costs, they throw 1 year of Cradlepoint router support in, but then in the out years, we'll have to pay another $5,000 for that. So like year 2 and 3 would be about $15,000 a year in data costs for the project. Do we think that the project the project has a lot of tentacles. It's kind of like a kraken or an octopus. But part of what it does is it's going to give another easier way for folks to pay. We get a lot of requests over the years, can I pay with my credit card, and we're not set up for that. So this will help check that box off. I don't think that's by itself suppressing ridership horribly, but it'll definitely help to have this. In addition, we're also going to get pretty good ridership on and off data from this, because the location of the tag gets logged in the database. So when we get our statements each week or each month, we'll see where they got on and off at. The idea being after 6 months, the promotional fare will go away, and we'll go back to a fare structure that's a lot like ours now. We were kind of out front on this when we went to a distance-based fare structure about 5 years ago. But our structure is kind of what the model for the whole region is going to be. So our fares shouldn't change much from what they are now. It'll still probably be about in the $10 range to go to Rcta from here. But anyway, so at the end of the promotional fare, that's the idea. We're also talking about a fare capping. One of the cool things about the technology is we've always struggled with not being able to have a day pass, because we're just not set up for it. With paper passes, it would be a bit of a nightmare. So we've never had one. With this system, it has the ability to create a day pass by something called fare capping, which it'll set a limit on how much fares you pay on your card in one day, and once you reach that, everything after that's free. Kind of the same premise as a paper day pass. So that'll be a feature that we have with this. I think that's what the Little Pay folks provide. But anyway, so there's a lot to it, and we just wanted to kind of check back in with the board with this, because we're at a point where it's kind of a point of no return. We need to buy these equipment and get started, or not. So we wanted to see if the board still wanted to forge ahead, and if so, great. The staff thinks it's going to be a good project. It's going to really, we're already getting attention at the state level for trying to do this. You know, a few small far north rural operators getting together and implementing credit card payments. Well, I think right now only Monterey Salinas Transit does this in California, so we're going to be like the second group. So it's innovative, it's painful because of that, it's more expensive than we thought, and that's why we wanted to check in with you guys and see if you still support it moving forward.
I know I do, and you just mentioned something that filled in a gap for the next item on the agenda. I was disappointed on that item to find that we weren't going to be able to track our ridership, and now we have a mechanism to do that as a result of this one. But I don't know.
I have a question. Are you done?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was just wondering, with our terrain, do they anticipate any issues with being able to pick up the Wi-Fi?
Yes, we do. We're working with that. But yeah, there's coverage areas where they may not be able to get a signal, so then the rider will be allowed on. The technology keeps trying, and as soon as it catches a signal, it'll catch it and send the data in. So we'll just, operationally, we'll need to be lenient when folks, if it's if it's acting up and they can't get a valid signal when they board, we'll have them just board and carry on. And, you know, if their card rejects at the end, I guess they stole a buck from us.
So would they scan it again at a later point?
Yeah, so it stores it, and then as soon as the signal is recaptured, it sends the data through, kind of like our AVL CAD and stuff does. So yeah, it does work that way, but certainly we'll, you know, we do expect some issues with the coverage. Another tentacle of this thing is we were talking with the Cal ITP folks, and they're a branch of Caltrans, and they actually have the year of, apparently Caltrans has some money for rural communications. So our corridor, because of this project, has a chance of possibly getting some tower money for some coverage fill-in. You know, nobody's guaranteeing that, but the fact that we're doing this project and getting on their radar, it may help with some future improvements to coverage up here, which would be great for emergency services and everybody.
Yes, it would.
Okay, any further questions from the board? Yeah, I did see that part about validator reject a card based on cellular communications. I'm glad you asked that question. I was thinking the same thing. All right, so is this the, we're going to ask, is there any public comment on this item? No? So this is just it's just a question on whether we want to continue on something we already approved?
Yeah, and whether you guys approve issuing the POs. I didn't do a resolution on this because I wasn't.
So we do need to approve a purchase order?
Yeah, if you could just approve, you can approve all, yeah, the POs and the agreements, you can just approve them all with one vote if you want.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. Second? Second. Thank you. Pull a vote.
That would be Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Roberts,
Yes.
Vice Chair Short,
Yes.
Chair Altman.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to item number 7 is discuss and approval of additional Swifty ABL CAD modules onboard driver application.
It's all tech projects. You guys are gonna love, I'm gonna hear about this for a long time, I'm afraid. This tech project is now, almost 6 months old. We started implementation in February. This is a software as a service Swiftly is, so it's sold by the year, by contract. So at the end of each year, we can rejigger which modules we want, whatever. Our initial foray into Swiftly, we purchased the base system, which we thought included GPS playback. It turned out to be it didn't. That's on me, my fault. We purchased the GTFS RT, which is one of the things we needed for the far north contactless fares project. That was a requirement, so we had to switch AVL cab providers this year in order to meet that requirement. So that's when Swiftly came in. They were available. They're very easy to use. We've had a real good experience with their implementation. They're a very well organized outfit. But yeah, so I misinterpreted the playback feature because we do need that, and we use that a lot to investigate complaints or incidents. It turns out that wasn't in there. Now we've talked to Swiftly. They're going to swap it out for the running time module, which is the same cost value. So it's going to be a zero-sum change order. So they're going to help us with that to kind of undo my mistake. But additionally, one of the things that Fernando and I have gotten a couple of demos from them on, they have an application that runs on tablets, and you may recall we already have tablets for each vehicle, albeit 3 or 4 years old now. They're getting a little long in the tooth, but we have them for our current double map system. So these tablets then could be loaded with Swiftly has an app that helps drivers track their on-time performance. It's called the Onboard App. It's loaded on the tablet computers, and what it kind of does is, it's in the driver's field, in the driver's field of vision there, and it tells them how they're doing as compared to the schedule. So if they start getting ahead of schedule, which is kind of a big problem we've always had here, it'll tell them, it'll warn them that, change colors, give them notice that, hey, you're ahead of schedule, so that way they can just pull over and not get hot, as we call it, which is like the worst thing as a bus rider. You don't want your bus getting to the stop before the time, because then you get there on time and there's no bus. So this will help a lot with that. It also lets them know how many minutes to the next time point, stuff like that. And it runs all day long, so they'll log in as who they are and what route they are. And it sort of just supports them all day, tells them if they're getting ahead of schedule. So that module we really like, and we'd like to add that. So we were able to get a proposal from Swiftly to prorate it for us for the rest of this contractual year, so now to February. So 6 months worth. By the time we implement this, it'll be September. So that's on the docket here. We're asking for your support to do that. It's like $449 a month, so it ends up being like $2,260 or something like that for 6 months. We just talked with her again today, and they waived the fee that they normally charge to implement this. So we would like to basically just update you on how the Swiftly is going. We want to add the one module for this last 6 months and see how it helps with the driver performance on the OTP stuff, on-time performance. And then as we approach next February, we have a bigger decision. Do we stay with Swiftly or do we go with like Passio, who was proposed to us by First Transit? We had a demo with them a couple of weeks ago. They seem real competent. So, you know, it's tough. There's a lot of competition out there, and it's difficult to differentiate between the firms. But we have Swiftly for now. We'd like to stay with them at least through the end of the next 6 months.
Their total. They're already putting their annual increase in, I see, for next year, right?
Yeah.
10%. So that a kind of a bargaining chip for searching out other vendors, it sounds like.
Yeah, it definitely gives us an idea, and plus we'll have the whole thing's going to end up being about $20,000 for this first year, all the modules together. So yeah, it gives us a chance to compare cost-wise for sure. But I mean, there's advantages to the software as a service too. We don't have to maintain anything locally. It's all on the cloud. The staff just logs in, and so you know, for a tiny agency like us, the no IT burden is a big help. So I kind of. At first, I didn't like the SaaS model either, but it's kind of nice to have them maintain it.
Well, I mean, it's almost nice they put that in there, I think, because costs might be up a little more than that, but
The other biggest
here's
thing
their
that
estimated cost.
we like about that system is on top of it telling you that you're running hot, it actually shows the driver a map of the area that they're driving. So their specific route will be on that tablet turn by turn based off of GPS. So you can go from one screen to the other. Okay. And that's the biggest thing that we like about it.
Well, thank you. It should help with less misturns and off routes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from the board?
I was wondering, the system that you said that First has available, or that they have for themselves, is that a considerable cost difference? Have you done any comparisons with the cost and also the service compared to this one?
Yes, excellent question to that. So First Transit included Passio is the name of the software, P-A-S-S-I-O. You can find them on the internet. They have a great website. It looks like good software. They're from like Georgia, so it looks like most of their clients are kind of from the South. But yeah, that was included in the bid model for the contract that First just won this last January. So if we don't go with Passio, we can get a credit back from First Transit for those costs, and they can tease them out of the agreement. I don't have the numbers back from Mark as to how much that's worth yet, but we can certainly, if we do choose that route, then we can apply that credit to help pay for the Swiftly if we wanted to. Or we stop using Swiftly and just accept for Passio from First Transit, go through the implementation phase, which is always fun. But then after that, they do seem a lot alike. I'm sure our dispatch staff, now that they're on their second AVL CAD and they handle it really well, they like Swiftly. So I'm sure they could run a third one if we go
So
that
let me
way.
make sure I'm understanding what you're saying is that FERS will credit back to us to cost us.
Passio, yeah, that's it. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm
I
sorry.
just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, no, that's it.
Okay.
We're thorough about the numbers.
Any more questions from the board?
No, sir.
Director Smith?
No,
Any public comment? Okay, so we do have the information on an annual cost, but this is actually a question to the board to approve a purchase order for a 6-month trial.
Yeah.
And then staff will work to decide whether or not to deploy the Passio or continue forward with Swifty, correct?
Right. That's
So
correct.
we really don't need to be too concerned about the 10% increase unless we continue with Swifty, right?
Right,
And that will turn into an annual cost, right?
correct.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion from the board.
I'll make the motion to approve purchase order to Carasoft for prorated through February 2023. Swiftly AVL/CAD on board application module and authorize the general manager to execute procurement documents. Did I get all that?
And I'll second.
Pull the vote, please.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Roberts,
Yes.
Vice Chair Short,
Yes.
Chairman Altman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, we're moving on to item number 8 is to review and accept RCTA fiscal year 2018-19 through fiscal year 2020-21. TDA, the Triennial Performance Audit.
Thank you, Chair Altman. This is, well, first of all, I will give Michael Baker International all the credit in the world for being merciful and understanding to audit the performance of an agency right after, during a pandemic. This has been fun. So the numbers inside here are not happy numbers, but I like the way they looked at the whole situation, and all the transit agencies in the state are kind of in the same spot. So this analyzes 3 fiscal years, 1920, 18-19, 19-20, and 2021. So it includes 1 year or so of on no impacts from the pandemic, then the last year and a half or so was. So the numbers overall don't look good, especially the 3rd year of the audit period. However, it is what it is. There's nothing we can do about that. That's what the school board said. It also contains a check on prior recommendations. So these performance audits are required by TDA law every 3 years. So we went through this last one back in like 2019 for the 3-year period prior to that. And then there'll be another one in 2025 for the 3-year period ending 24. They look at prior audit recommendations, and then they come up with some new recommendations or findings, depending on how you want to call them. So looking at the prior recommendations from 3 years ago, recommendation 1 is sticking for this year as well, because they still found some inadequacies in some of the data that we report, and some of which we received from operations. So, but they did note a lot of improvement over 3 years ago. So they just want us to make sure that we have separate tabs to track complaints, road calls, accidents each month, and a lot of that's been implemented. It may not have been in every monthly workbook, so they note that that's a continuing recommendation for next time. And part of it was our annual report. We've used the same format for many years that I inherited from Mark. And that doesn't have a summary of like road calls, for example. So they want to see that more information from the monthly report go into the annual report. So that's an easy one to get. So that one's on me, and I'll make sure you'll be getting an annual report here in the next 3 or 4 months on 21, 22. So I'll make sure that we upgrade that and include the missing data that they want to see in there. Let's see, our recommendation 2 was to build a capital fund reserve. We did a good job with that. I think they dropped that, but it's no longer a recommendation. We have a reserve now probably about $500,000, so they were impressed with that. Recommendation 3 was, and this one's, they left this in there because it's not completely done yet either. It's an accounting mechanism to improve our stats, and that would be to capitalize some of First Transit's monthly bill, because some of it's for contractor equipment that they provide, like some of the support cars, for example. So there's some things that we can work with our fiscal auditor each year to tease out some stuff and exempt it from the operating costs, which will improve our stats, which will help because our fare box is way down like everybody else in the state. So that prior recommendation 3 is going to get rolled over. 4 was look at the cultural center as an adequate transit hub, and I think because we started doing significant planning and work on that, I think that one has been considered implemented, so we're done there. Number 5 was to keep working with the park system on potential tourist attracting routes, and we've been working on that, so I think that one also is checked off as completed. And then we have any new findings. Let's see. Might be it. Might be the 2 rollover findings that are not completely addressed yet. I should have this memorized there. I apologize. Page 44. Okay, so one of the findings is they flagged that our fare box recovery went below 10% in 2021, and that was the pandemic obviously crushing us. Our fare box fell off the table, so it was noted as a finding just so that it can be followed up on in 3 years. The state did, the Assembly passed legislation exempting fare box penalties for a couple of years from the pandemic. But eventually, they'll start to use those standards again once they feel we're out of the woods on that.
General Manager Wright, Vice Chair Short would like to ask a question if that doesn't interrupt you too.
Their recommendation on the cooperative maintenance agreement with Humboldt Transit Authority, he's just kind of wondering what your guys' thoughts were on that. He kind of focused on the electric vehicles.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, no, I think it was actually good foresight. They didn't run it by us much, so I read it, it's like, oh, that's a cool idea, where'd that come from? So I don't know the genesis of it, but it's got potential, especially if we're leaning on our partners down south to charge vehicles down there while we're down there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I was really glad they included it.
Good deal.
I thought it was a great recommendation. They didn't talk with us much about it, but it was still a good one. So I like that one, and I'm glad it's in there.
Thank you.
Good deal.
Please continue.
I think that's pretty much all I wanted to cover. It's not a real happy document. It wasn't a real happy 3 years, but it's regulatory. We've done it. Now we just need to accept it and move on to the next one.
I don't think any business would have enjoyed a pandemic audit.
Right.
Okay, so I think all we need here is a motion to accept the audit.
I'll make the motion to accept the audit for
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have any public comment on this item? Thank you. Okay, pull the vote, please.
Okay, Director Roberts,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Vice Chair Short,
Yes.
Chair Altman.
Yes. All right, thank you, everyone. And let's go on to item 9, which is authorized release of requests for proposals for South Oregon Medical Shopping Shuttle Planning Study.
We already discussed this. I will move that we approve this item.
Any public comment?
Non-medical though, shouldn't it? It should be non-medical though, shouldn't it?
Where?
Medical, was it non-medical?
It actually says medical /
Non-emergency.
shopping.
Yeah, it should
Non-
say
yeah.
non-emergency.
Yeah, non-emergency.
Okay. So we're going to pull the vote to authorize release of requests for proposals for South Oregon non-emergency / shopping shuttle planning study. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Public comment. You have a motion and a second.
We do not have any public comment, correct?
There we go.
Okay.
Beautiful.
We can pull the vote,
Ready to vote? Okay.
please.
Vice Chair Short,
Yes.
Chair Altman,
Yes.
Director Roberts,
Yes.
Director Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. So we'll get that out probably late this week. And when we come back in late September, hopefully we're awarding. So that'll be scheduled for the
Okay, we're going to move on to the most exciting item of the evening, item 10. We're going to discuss the purchase of used bus at auction to mitigate delayed arrival of replacement buses.
Yes, thank you. This is an exciting item. So Nick has been growing more. Nick is our maintenance manager, Nicholas West. So he's been growing more and more concerned as our order of 3 buses has continued to be stalled. We're not sure when we're going to get them, hopefully this fall, but it's been the better part of 9 or 10 months already, and we don't have a production schedule date even. So that has not stopped our buses from aging. It hasn't stopped the wear and tear of our routes and our climate here. So he started asking if we could look at some out-of-the-box solutions to try to help the fleet. First Transit on their own has been helping by, they've obtained 4, 5 vehicles that have helped. Nick now has a shop truck. We have a couple of Transit Connects that we can use in our paratransit service soon. So First has been helping in ways they can, and then Nick asked if we'd be willing to maybe pick up a used bus if we could find something decent. So being open to everything in these crazy times, I'm like, yeah, sure, we can look at it. So he found an auction house actually called General Auction. They're in Southern California. And he alerted me to it maybe a month ago, and then alerted me again more forcefully a couple weeks ago, almost 3 now. But that there was an auction in OCTA, and what had happened is First Transit has a contract with Orange County Transit Authority for part of their paratransit. So he knew from his maintenance, regional maintenance guy down there, he knew that OCTA had just disposed of a bunch of buses that were well cared for because he knows the shop that did the maintenance on them. So that was it. And obviously we were interested in these vehicles because we did have a faith that they were well maintained and they were relatively new. So these were vintage 2015 buses, 2014. So vehicles that were only about 7, 8 years old, which is younger than several of our fleet. So he pointed me to the auction site. There was about 16, I want to say, OCTA recently freshly retired buses available on the auction. Unfortunately, 8 of them, all the 8 lower mileage ones, we were not allowed to bid on because we don't have a bus dealer's license. But then of the other 8, it's, imagine eBay, it's eBay for vehicles. So I'm on there and we ended up getting one. We won a bus. It has the lowest mileage of all the ones we were allowed to bid on, so the 8 that were open to everybody to bid. We bagged the one with the lowest miles. It's got 212,000 miles. It's a gasoline engine, so it's a lot of miles, but, you know, he swears that these were well maintained. So we picked up one, and so now we're in the process of paying it and getting the documents set up. The vehicle could be here within about a week and a half. We're having it brought up on a flatbed, even though it is in running condition. Logistics, we didn't want to try the long drive without having, you know, it inspected by maintenance. So we're going to have it flatbedded up. We use TDA money, so it's relatively clean money. The purchase price of the vehicle was like $7,200. Then there was like an auction fee of like $1,000, and sales tax. So it's about a $9,000 investment.
Oh, that's pretty good.
So compared to a new vehicle that's about $150,000, we're getting it cheap. And then Nick's going to use it and add it into the fleet because, you know, a lot of the buses are really getting old and waiting for replacement. So that's the story of the most interesting bus we have. I don't have a picture, but it looks good. It looks like our regular buses. It does not have a marquee window in the front for a head sign because OCTA used them for dial-a-ride only in Orange County. But other than that, it's a Ford F-450, just like the rest of our fleet. So it'll fit in nice, and it's a 2015, so it's actually newer than about 3 or 4 of our vehicles. But the miles are kind of high, but the price was right. And with us, I didn't want to throw an emergency meeting together to discuss a $9,000 purchase, but yeah, I wanted to catch you guys up on it, and when it arrives, you'll know what it's about. So that's it. And I guess it's not really an approval item, but we just want you to know about it.
Going to work on getting your dealer's license now?
Yeah, because there was some really nice ones in there. They're like, oh, we'll hook you up with the guy. I'm like, okay, hold on.
I don't think it's that hard to get.
Yeah, I don't think it's too hard to get.
Probably
'Cause
not. It's just
no,
crazy
my-
that you had to have one.
My father-in-law had one, and I went to the auctions with him to buy cars, and it wasn't, I mean, he was an old guy, and he managed to maintain it, you know. I don't think it's that hard to get.
Wouldn't be a bad idea.
With the situation where we're in, I mean, Nick asked for 2 or 3. The reason we got one is, one, I didn't have you guys' approval. 2, I wasn't sure how we could get a check out of the county quick enough to pay them, so I wanted to make sure it would fit on my credit card just in case. And 2 would not. Let's put it that way. I have to have a county credit card. But 1, I guess if I had to pay it, I would have. But the county was able to pay, so we FedExed the check out today.
I'm thinking you have to have a room that the Department of Motor Vehicles can access all your records to have that dealer's license. So basically, yeah, but selling them becomes a little bit easier for you, actually, or for us, yeah. I would like to look into getting that dealer's license.
I can check into it. We might want to do this again, and we could, if that's how they do it, to restrict the more demand, the higher demand vehicles to those with licenses.
I mean, DMV's already got their hand right in everything anyways, don't they?
Would it also help with selling our old buses
Yeah.
to have that?
That as well.
And if supply chain problems persist, we might be here again, so.
I would like to open the next bid at $11. Just kidding. So this part in here about the annual allocation will not be enough to cover the bus replacement. That's only for the new ones, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for that information. Do we have any public comment on that item? No hands raised? Okay. Okay, we're moving on to item 11, management reports.
Okay, I will just be brief on this one. We're going to meet again in 2 months. I'm going to be out of town in late August, so in 2 months we'll bring it back, hopefully with an award for that Southern Oregon non-emergency medical shuttle. Possibly an award to start the engineering maybe for the Front Street lot, the parking lot we're looking at for a future transit hub there. And then probably an update on the saga with the technology projects. Hopefully we're almost ready to implement or test by then.
So we're looking at the 26th of September?
26th. Will that work for everybody?
When
Works
is
for
that
me.
gonna be?
26th of September?
Yeah.
September 26th. And that's all I have really for the report. Fernando, do you want to give an update on staffing or anything, or did we already? We covered
Pretty much
that.
covered that.
Yeah.
You're fine with that?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. Did we, accept the minutes from the last meeting? Did I miss that?
It was on the consent agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on the consent calendar.
Okay.
And the answer is yes. Okay, with no public comment, we're going to move on to item 12, which is announcements. Does any member of the board have any announcements?
Got nothing.
Okay.
I would just like to see that, like, at least a little bit of a staff report on what it would take for a business license if we could do that.
Yeah, maybe how much it costs and
Nothing, I mean, nothing radical, just, you know what I mean? I don't want to,
just maybe put in the management reports or something.
yeah, that'd be good. Something easy.
Sounds good. Now, we might want to do this first one, if it makes Dick happy, we might want to do it.
The way he sees it, anything's better than the 3 old buses we have.
Yeah, the only concern I see is the supply problem for parts. Yeah.
Well, it's almost good that we went gas. Are we still allowed to talk about that item?
Yeah.
It was almost good when I heard it was gasoline. I own a diesel and I know things are expensive. Parts are expensive. I mean, it is high miles, yes, but any breakdown is going to be way less expensive.
Yeah.
I'm owning a diesel's like owning a boat in my book.
Just a big hole in the water you throw your money in.
Yeah.
The other benefit since it is an E450, all of the other buses that we have are currently E450, so we have a lot of the parts in stock for that specific vehicle. So,
Well, even with the whole becoming a dealer thing, even if we needed something for parts, if we had to buy a parts bus, you know, it would be a lot easier than waiting for parts.
Yeah, Fernando, if you think about it, snap a picture or two and send it out to us when it shows up. That'd be cool.
Okay, I'll shut up, Cheryl. Sorry.
Are the new buses we're waiting on, are they electric?
No, these
Okay.
3 are gasoline, maybe 2 gas and 1 diesel.
2 gas and 1 diesel, yes.
Two smaller gas ones for around town, little stores, and 1 of the larger diesels for the region. Those are the first 3. We did get good news, and we don't want to jinx it, we haven't actually got the contract. I think we got awarded funds for 2 more lessons, by Caltrans in a recent grant, application to be sent in by April. So hopefully I can confirm that in September, then we'll order those, or, you know, could be another year or more before they arrive. It's unclear how long it's going to take the industry to catch up.
All right, look forward to that news. All right, so if there's nothing else from the board, I would like to adjourn this to the next RCTA board meeting, which will be on Monday, September 26th at 5:30. Thank you, everyone.